Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the second edition of Shaw Cable's Nelson Nightline, a new live monthly phone-in talk show. I'm Morrie Zaitlin, your host of Nelson Nightline, along with co-host Marianne. Tonight we have two guests. They'll be both on the set shortly, Penny Caron and Marty Horswill. Before our guests, though, you'll hear from Nelson's Nightline's own roving reporter, Bill Webster, with his man-in-the-street interviews in downtown Nelson. Tonight we're continuing the discussion of your vision of Nelson over the next 5 to 10 years. What steps would you like to see the city, the provincial government, and private developers take to help make Nelson grow and prosper? Our sponsors tonight are Nelson Pacific Computers, Crow Couriers, and Halcom Computer Systems. We want to hear your ideas and opinions tonight. Our telephone number is 354-4200. Now I'd like to introduce my co-host for tonight's show, Marianne. Hi, Marianne.
Hi, thanks, Morrie. Before we go to our man on the street interviews, we're going to chat with William Webster, as Morrie mentioned a few minutes ago. And Bill, you had another interesting day last Friday.
Yeah, it was a real good day.
It
was a beautiful sunny day, and the dust was flying around in the streets.
And you said people were recognizing both of you. And
yeah, it was a lot of fun. People knew exactly what we were doing. It was a strange day, though. There were a lot of visitors in town, and we caught people from the States just getting out of their cars and stuff. And it was a funny day because the street cleaners were out cleaning, and we got some comments about the dust. Actually, at the opening of the clip that people will see, I'm squinting because of all the dust and the sun, and you hear a lot of noise through the clip as well, and that's the big street cleaner that's taking care of all the dust.
It could have been snow, though.
Well, it could have been snow. It's more like late April or early May. It's not like the middle of February at all.
what do you think the major topic was from the people that you interviewed?
This time we asked specifically about the downtown area, and parking came up a lot. Mm-hmm. I was a little amazed at how many people actually suggested a parkade.
That surprises me as well.
I thought for sure people would talk about transit and bicycling and walking and that sort of thing, but some real free thinkers were talking about parkades, and that was a bit of a surprise. Another thing that really came up a lot was just about everybody talked about maintaining the heritage idea, and how much they like that. So that was...
And as far as the parking goes, even though people may have suggested parkades as the solution, don't you think that if provided with other solutions to the problem, they would be just as supportive of those?
Oh, that remains to be seen.
So you didn't
I wasn't offering them other solutions, so I don't know what the response was going to be.
And you got no creative solutions to it other than building a parkade?
Well, people came right out with parkade for the most part. We had some off-the-wall ones. But
they say where they like to see the parkade? Right downtown on the outskirts with a bus, or what did they say?
No, nobody mentioned where, you know.
Because that's the question. I mean, we have one downtown. Where are you going to put the second parkade?
I've heard varying ideas about where a parkade should go, but in a town this small, that's a difficult one to address.
What is your personal view on the parking and a parkade or no parkade?
Well, I think it's been shown quite clearly that the automobile is responsible for a great deal of pollution and a great deal of environmental harm. And I think that we need to move away from using the automobile so much. I don't drive. I never have driven. I've never had a driver's license. And I don't have any problem getting around. And I'm rather amazed that people need to go from Carbonate Street to the post office in their automobiles. You know,
we mustn't forget, though, the elderly and often, young mothers with kids.
Well, I can understand situations like that, but you can stand on any street in town and count the cars that go by and how many just have one person in them, and one person who's quite capable of...
I mean, our transit system is, of course, an option, a beefed-up transit system that could come into play here as well.
Actually, through the day, our transit system runs every half hour. It's quite efficient. It goes all over town. I use it a fair bit if I have to get someplace in a hurry, and I don't have a problem.
And how full are the buses when you're on there?
Moderately. They're only full at times when the schools are getting out, like rush hour. The rest of the time, they're just half or a third full at most. So the transit system isn't used to the degree that it could be.
And again, you said you got a lot of favorable comments on the heritage theme within the downtown core, and a lot of people were very happy with the image that Nelson has created over the past number of years.
Yeah, that's a real strong
Yeah.
part. That is a real attractive part of Nelson, and people recognize it. And I think it's Nelson's ace in the hole, so to speak.
And Penny Caron, one of our guests this evening, she's on the Heritage Advisory Committee, and I believe they're looking at a project to take the heritage theme out into the residential areas as well, and really get something going.
That would be a good
in that
idea.
area.
They've done that in some cities in Ontario.
Okay.
There's one other thing I wanted to mention is the new provincial building. We talked about that a fair bit. And people, for the most part, seem to really favor it. We also talked to Howard Dirks in our clip, which you'll see, and it was interesting because he claimed that was the last thing the social credit pushed through the Treasury Board. So it'll be interesting to see what comes out of that.
Okay, well, are we ready to go to the clips?
You know,
and
show
see?
your film now, Bill?
Go for it.
Okay.
Okay, we'll be back in a few moments.
Hi, I'm William Webster out in front of the old RCMP building at the corner of Stanley and Victoria Street in Nelson. As you can see, there's lots of work going on here. It's the location of the new library and police station. Right across Victoria Street here is the site of a new $7 million provincial building that was announced this week. Michael Merrick and I are going to take a walk downtown and see what people have to say about the sorts of development they'd like to see in downtown Nelson.
Downtown Nelson is the best place in the world to do business. It really is. It's very friendly, and it's the amenity areas. To me, it makes it a home place, a people's place, and that's what I like about the downtown Nelson.
Okay, is there any particular development you'd like to see happen in downtown Nelson?
There are things happening. Let's put it that way.
Okay, what do you think of the new provincial building?
I think it's great.
I think that's a good plan.
Yeah, should have come sooner.
Well, the nice thing about downtown is that there's always activity. It's concentrated in a very few blocks, and consequently there is always movement. There's always life. Nelson's got a heart. A lot of other towns are spread out. This one's very concentrated, but very alive.
Okay, well, what would you like to see in the way of development downtown?
I don't know. I really don't know. I'd like to see us continue on with the heritage aspect of it. The restoration. I think most of the buildings, though, that can be restored have been restored. But I'd like to see them kept up now, so that we do keep that nice look that we've adopted.
Do you think there's any particular development that hasn't worked?
In downtown? Well, if it hasn't worked, it's not here anymore. Okay. I guess that's the key thing.
And what do you think of the new $7 million provincial building that's going to go up at the corner of Victoria and Stanley? Do you think
that's great?
A good idea?
That will fill a hole that we've had there. I was happy that we were able to put that through. That was one of the last things we put through Treasury Board. And but it will fill that hole. It will give off-street parking to the employees, which I'm very pleased about, because that'll be the first building parking that the government has provided in this city. And it will start drawing traffic a little further towards Victoria Street. So I think that'll certainly complement the police station and library across the street.
Do you have any ideas about how to solve the traffic and parking problem in downtown Nelson?
Well, I think it's funny. We have a different attitude towards parking when we get to a town this size. The same people that live here and will circle a block to find a parking space right in front of a building. Will go to Vancouver and park in Parkade and leave their car all day and walk blocks. Maybe we have to adopt a little more of a flexible attitude towards parking and park where parking is available.
Okay. Well, Howard Dirks, the eternal optimist. Still.
You betcha. Good to see you.
Have a good day.
Have a good day.
I don't know about development, but I like the heritage part of it. for downtown Nelson.
So you think we should continue along the heritage?
Definitely. I like it the way it is. I think it's been developed very nicely.
So you don't think there should be further development?
No, I don't.
At all?
Not really.
What do you think of the idea? There was just this week a $7 million provincial building announced at the corner of Victoria and Stanley. Do you think that's a good plan?
I think that's a bit much. I'm sort of wondering why they need 2 provincial buildings in town. But I guess it's good for the economy. It'll be lots of building.
Okay.
Well, I think the way that it's developed in the last few years has been excellent. I prefer shopping downtown to down in the mall. I'd like to see another parkade. I think additional parking spaces in this area are tremendously necessary, particularly in the winter, because half the parking places are taken up with snow. And I think that they find that there's a lot of people who would like to park permanently, and it should be in the downtown area. Other than that, I love it.
What do you think of the library police station idea?
Combination?
Yeah.
I haven't heard of that one yet.
The remodeling.
I'm really unhappy that the library didn't get its own facility. I think it's something that is really short-sighted on the part of the people in the town and in the neighboring area. But you do what you have to do, and if that's the most economical thing at the time for the time being, I think it's what's necessary. I think ultimately they'll have to be separated. The police will have to have their own facility sooner or later, and later is more unfortunate. But money counts. There's only a limited amount of things that you can do, and people in this area are suffering from the recession just like everybody else.
Parking for me is a number one spot, having got my second park in 2 days. Another parkade would be very helpful, probably on the super value parking lot. I think that would be a grand idea. And
is there anything that you would really like to see in Nelson? I know you work with women's groups quite a bit and with the advocacy project and low-income people. Is there anything that you really feel needs to be developed here to help those people?
well, housing. Affordable, low-income housing is a big need. We're rapidly losing all the spaces as rents climb. Folks on fixed or low incomes will soon have no place to rent.
Are you satisfied with the new housing development in Rosemont?
Well, I'm delighted that that's happening, but that has something like 22 units. 22 units for seniors, I forget what so many for seniors, and a limited number for low-income families. So that leaves out single people, low-income single people. It leaves out people with a mental disability or a mental health problem. They have nowhere special to go.
Well, Nelson itself, downtown, is really very nice.
Well, parking is, they could improve it a bit, but we just knew we come in from Randall, so we know.
But the downtown area is one of the nicer communities you go to, I think.
Is there anything that you think it really needs, or besides parking?
Parking is a big item.
Well, they've got nice eating places.
Would you like to see more of these kiosks and
I like those, and then a little more trees.
Trees,
yeah.
especially
They have done a big thing. Of course, they've come a long ways.
At one time, Nelson had a lot of trees in the streets, and I think it is nicer when they're there than when they're not there.
I think a lot of development could be made down along the waterfront. Touristy type things, a motel or a hotel down along there. Seems a bit of a waste to have the lake and not have something down there.
What do you like about downtown?
It's nice and friendly and homely, and everything's right next to each other, which is good.
Okay, where are you from?
I'm from Australia.
I guess the heritage aspect is a main asset down here, and I guess continuing that theme would be my main interest around here.
Have you got any ideas how to solve the parking problem?
Geez, I don't know. Maybe parking off-site with a shuttle or underground parking facility.
Waterfront, that's what needs developing.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, take care, Bill. I think it's pretty nice. It's a nice place to go to school. As far as the development of it, I'm not too sure.
You're going to school here?
Yeah.
What school are you going to?
Suffolk College.
Okay.
What I like about it is its attractiveness, its friendliness. It's comfortable. It's nice wide streets. You don't feel like you're in the middle of a war zone here. The one development I could see would be greatly appreciated, if not right in the downtown or nearby, is another parking facility.
Another parking facility.
Yeah.
Are you happy with where your library is moving? Where the library?
Yes, I am actually.
You're quite pleased about that?
Yes, yeah.
What do you think of the $7 million provincial building that's going to go in across the street from it?
I hope they're providing parking. That's my major. I mean, it will block off the view for us, but I can certainly not complain about that in the long run. But I would really like to see them provide their own parking. They haven't done the best possible job in the current facility or other provincial building.
Do you think there's enough amenity areas and kiosk areas in downtown Nelson?
Yeah. As a person who does put up posters, I find they tend to get lost in the shuffle. So it would be nice if there was some way of making it a little sort of cleaner and, certain events on certain kiosks or something like that. I don't know. It's really, really hard to put up a poster on there, and I haven't hope of anybody seeing it, but because it's just this mismatch of stuff. But I like the number of amenity areas. I think is fine.
We'll let you get to your lunch.
Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.
I really like the atmosphere, the heritage atmosphere down here. And developmental-wise, I off the top of my head can't think of anything right now. There seems to be a fair amount of teams hanging around downtown, so perhaps we could somehow get something together for our teens, some kind of a recreation complex. I know we have the aquatic center, but maybe something a little more geared to the needs of our teens.
Okay, what do you think of the roller park?
I think that's great. I think that's a great start, but it's only meeting a select group of kids' needs.
Do you have any ideas about the parking problem in downtown Nelson? Have you noticed the parking problem?
Well, yeah, I've noticed that it's hard for me to find a spot to park often when I come down here. Lots of round-the-block driving, yeah.
Do you have any suggestions about how to cure it?
Parkades, perhaps.
Great place to live, isn't it?
Yeah, I'd agree.
No, it's city council anywhere, but other than that, they seem to chase away all good businesses, but overtaxing everybody.
Okay.
What are you going to do with this?
Oh, we'll use it on our Wednesday night program.
On Channel 10?
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
Oh, we took our walk. You've heard what the people had to say. I'm William Webster with Michael Merrick in front of Shaw Cable in downtown Nelson. Catch you later.
Welcome back to Nelson Nightline. Sorry for the glitches, ladies and gentlemen. Our ENG man fell asleep at the camera. It was working right at the beginning. Our number to phone in, and we'd like you to start calling in so we can get people on the line, is 354-4200. Tonight's guests on Nelson Nightline, we have two special guests, Alderman Marty Horswill and Penny Caron. Alderman Horswill sits on the city's transportation committee, which takes in parking and transit and things like that. He's also on the post-secondary education committee, the environmental committee, and the watershed committee. Penny Caron is a director of the West Kootenay Childcare Society, but as well as that is also on the Heritage Advisory Committee and the Heritage Pride Program. Penny also is on the city's transportation committee and on a tourism focus group. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen.
Glad to be here, Morrie.
Thank you. I certainly wasn't surprised at all the comments on the compliments to the downtown core and the heritage thing, but what did surprise me were the number of people who suggested a parkade as a solution. I know, Marty, the city did a survey last year, I believe in March, and certainly that was not the kind of comments that were coming in at that time. I was wondering if you could expand on that a little bit for our viewers.
Yeah, we did that survey partly during the Christmas season, and then had another round a little bit later to sort of get the shoppers who weren't here for Christmas. But you're right, a lot of the comments at that time were please anything but a parkade. I never go in the things. I wouldn't touch them with a 10-foot pole sort of attitude. I don't know if the different attitude that you got from the interviews on the street was because you were talking to different people, or perhaps people are sensing the problem is a lot greater now, and so there's a more sort of let's solve the problem attitude, and the obvious solution that comes to everybody's mind is another parkade. The committee's talked about it at great length in the 2 years that I've been on council and responsible for transportation. And our most recent discussions led to a decision that we would actually do another survey. We tried to do a random survey. We're asking for some proposals right now, and essentially we are trying to get some kind of indication from the community whether they wish us to go ahead and spend what would be a very considerable amount of money on another parkade, or whether there is interest in some of the other options. And those options, as was mentioned, would include beefing up the transit system to encourage people to leave their car at home and ride, to perhaps look at some kind of parking facility on the periphery of the community and provide a park and ride option for people that presently it doesn't exist. We're also talking to the provincial government and pointing out to them that they create at least a third of the downtown parking need, their employees, and yet at the present time provide almost no parking for their employees' personal vehicles. Most of the parking that the province does have is taken up with government vehicles.
The report that was delivered to the city last year recommended or stressed that a great percentage of those surveyed stressed that the protection of the environment should be considered in formulating any parking solution. Is that a priority of the parking committee to kind of use that as a criteria, that it's the environment and the impacts of the environment on the environment in terms of finding that solution?
Well, people are very conscious of that, and we need to be, but it's... Sorry, we have a phone call.
Yes, we'll go. Thank you. Good evening, Nelson Nightline. You're on the air.
Yes, my question is directed to Marty Horswill because he's a councillor.
Yes, go ahead.
I understand that in order to purchase the old RCMP building for the library and the city police, that the funds were taken from the parkade fund. Can Marty elaborate on that and tell me if that is true or not?
Okay, thank you very much.
Well, it's actually gone a couple of rounds. The parkade fund that was established long before I was on council was initially used in, I think, around 1985 to construct the Public Works building. And there was an understanding at that time that people will recall there was the sale by the city of the former Public Works property to allow a business development to go ahead, and there was a payment to be made to the city for that property, and the understanding was that when that payment was received it would replenish the fund. But the caller is quite correct, is at the time that the money was finally paid over was when we were trying to deal with immediate pressure from the police board that we had to get the police into a new building, and we also had the problem with the old library. So at that time council did decide to, rather than roll the money back into the off-parking reserve, to use it to purchase the RCMP building. But what we've also done is, and at the recommendation of the Transportation Committee, is have council enact a bylaw which requires that all the revenue from off-street parking, or not from off-street parking, from the parking meters, all the revenue from the meters now goes into the reserve, and the reserve by bylaw cannot be used for any other purpose. So this year we put, I believe it was about $70,000 into that fund. Next year we will put closer to $170,000 into that fund, all parkade revenue, parking meter revenue. So that fund will build up quite rapidly at that rate.
Okay, we have another call. Good evening, Nelson Nightline. You're on the air.
Good evening. My question is, with the limited amount of space available in Nelson now, with reasonable planning, what's your idea of Nelson growing up instead of out?
Who's this directed to? All of us?
Well.
Okay. Thank you.
I presume by that he's suggesting that we increase the density by allowing buildings to go higher than the bylaw does presently. That may well be the only solution if indeed the growth that we've been experiencing in the last few years continues, and there are very few properties available in the downtown area for development, and I expect that they will be quite rapidly developed. The province is going ahead with this new building. And this new building, by the way, will be 4 stories, so it's already heading in the direction the caller's suggesting.
Which is that, the parking building or the new provincial building?
The new provincial building will have 4 floors of offices and 2 floors of underground parking.
Penny, does the Heritage Advisory Committee have any concerns over buildings beginning to go up, especially within the downtown core with all the heritage buildings that are there?
Well, the only consideration that we would have is if the building that they are proposing were to go in a site where there is a recognizable heritage building standing, then we would
because that could begin to compromise our whole look that people have all commented on. So that's a delicate.
Well, any of the proposed designs of any new buildings have to go through the Heritage Advisory Committee, and we try to have sympathetic, what's called sympathetic approach to the newer designs.
I'd like to come back to that, but we've got another call. Good evening, Nelson Nightline.
Hi, I have a question for Marty. First of all, I was under the impression that the parkade was paid for by downtown merchants for the use of the merchants' customers, and I was wondering if you would happen to know how many city employees and government employees take up space at this time in the parkade.
Thank you.
Good question.
Well, I don't know the exact answer to your question, but it's quite a considerable number. It's interesting. You're quite correct that the way the bylaw operates for the present parkade is that any deficit that isn't covered by the revenues from the parkade charges is picked up by the merchants in a specified area. And the expectation when the building was built was that customers would use it. The experience has been that customers don't use it. And we've had a lot of discussions about that on the Transportation Committee, whether we should reorganize the parkade to move the hourly parking or daily parking facility from the top floor to the bottom floor to see if that would encourage the public to use it more. But in the end, it really doesn't make that much of a difference because all of the people who work downtown and drive their car are going to park somewhere, and the problem is that we have an overall shortage of parking, period. And so we either have to reduce the number of cars coming into town by providing alternative ways for people to get to the downtown area, or else we have to provide more parking. And whether the parking is being used by a customer or being used by an employee doesn't make that much difference. If there's an overall shortage, there's going to be a shortage. So rather than trying to penalize the employees, we're trying to look at resolving the problem by either reducing the number of cars or increasing the amount of spaces. There is a problem on the street with meter pluggers in particular, and there I think quite definitely the downtown merchants need to do more to encourage their fellow merchants and their own employees to not park on the street, on Baker Street or on the side streets, but to park in the periphery or use the parkade so that their customers can in fact use those spaces. So we've got tough on the meter pluggers in recent months, and we're actually going to be towing people who are repeat offenders.
You're not going to use the boot.
We don't own a boot.
What would it cost, Marty?
Excuse me,
Mark. Another one on the line. Great.
Good evening, Nelson Nightline. You're on the air.
Hi, I've got a couple of comments concerning parking. One is I don't think you're going to be able to reduce the number of cars coming into the downtown core, and I think the sort of the new age has hit Nelson, and I don't think people are maybe opposed to paying for parking in a parkade like maybe they were perhaps 10, 12 years ago. My major suggestion here would be for the city, and I don't know the proper routes that you have to follow to do it, but it would be to lobby or seriously get the provincial government to look at building their own parkade behind their own provincial government building, thus freeing up Nelson's parkade quite considerably. Because I think the majority of the vehicles in there, if someone were to actually make a survey, would be provincial government vehicles, whether they be employees like in the government building and or provincial vehicles that are parked there for the use of provincial employees.
Great, thank you for your comments. Penny, has the Transportation Committee explored that with the provincial or the government at all?
That is something that the Transportation Committee has addressed. They've been looking at that.
Have you talked to the provincial government people? And
I don't know, Marty.
Oh yes, we've put as much pressure on as we can, and your listeners can add to that, because the reality is that if the province were to deal with its employees' parking needs, there would be no downtown parking problem.
Well,
that would take care of 300 or more parking spaces.
The new government building that's going to be built on Stanley Street will have two floors of parking for that building. Obviously, the white building has a lot of people working in it. That's where their crunch is, I guess.
It's the white building, and well, the construction of the new building is very welcome, because presently those government workers are in other buildings around town, and those buildings don't have, for the most part, any parking facilities. The big problem for Nelson is the fact that we are a heritage community, and we have all of these marvelous buildings that were built way before the car ever became a factor. So there was no parking space bylaw at the time those buildings were constructed, and they will never have parking for them. And so, we really, as a community, have to solve the problem some other way than a bylaw that says if you build a building, you have to provide so many spaces.
Do you have any idea what it would cost if we had to build another parking lot? Have you looked at that?
The figure that we got, the provincial government for its new building is estimating that each parking space they will construct will cost $17,000.
Per space?
Per space. So presumably it would cost us somewhere in that same neighborhood to construct a building. So, amortizing a $17,000 investment over a 20-year period, the actual economic cost of renting a parking space is probably in the $90 to $100 a month range. And yet we're renting our spaces right now for $30 and $35.
People are getting a bargain.
They are, and one of the reasons we increased the parking fees and increased the parkade rates a year ago is to begin to move towards something that comes a lot closer to the actual economic cost.
Alternative, you say if we had a park and ride, where would you place something like that? Outside of town on the North Shore, or do you know?
Well, the advantage of the park and ride is that usually you can find pieces of property that are less valuable in the periphery.
Where are the people coming in?
In fact, in Nelson, that's not a simple matter either. We tried to get CPR to lease us some of their space, and that came to naught. We're looking at using the parking area around Lakeside Park, which doesn't get much use most of the year.
In the off-season.
And we have the transit side of the system in place.
That's an option too, to put in more buses.
Well, no, even with the present buses, we could provide the park and ride program partly by using the Handy Dart bus, which isn't used that early in the morning, so it could contribute to a park and ride system.
The new bus service out the North Shore has been tremendously successful, hasn't it? Which indicates that people are willing to go that route?
Yeah, the difficulty with the North Shore system from the point of view of commuters is that there's only one trip in the morning and one in the afternoon that really fits within the working schedule. So we were hopeful that the province would add a second bus, and we were also very supportive, along with the regional district, of BC Transit initiating a service heading out towards South Slocan and Blewett that would provide the same kind of service to those areas. Unfortunately, BC Transit has just advised us this week that they have no increase in their budget, so they're not going to be able to increase services at all this year.
So I'd just like to go back to the Heritage Advisory Committee for a minute, Penny. I don't know if a lot of people in the community surprisingly are aware that that committee's in place and kind of what its mandate is. And I wondered if you could just explain it a little bit.
Well, actually, it's something that we've been reflecting on lately ourselves. We do have a very low profile. We act as an advisory body to the City Council, and we go through things such as building permits and sign permits. Most of the most businesses, if they're putting up a new sign or a new awning or something, it has to be cleared through the Heritage Advisory Committee. And lately we've been looking at ourselves and thinking we should have a higher profile in the community, because heritage is one of the things that has really made Nelson a very recognizable community, and we're a very desirable place to come to. Lots of people have come as tourists to see Nelson as a result of the heritage work we've done, and now they're coming back to live here or wanting to live here. It's had a remarkable impact on the community, this heritage.
You're involved in a new program or project under the
that's
Heritage
right.
Advisory Council, the Heritage Pride?
Well, this is a program. It's a program being put on by the Community Pride. It's a Community Pride workshop, and this is something that is funded by Heritage Trust. We hope to have a workshop in May for homeowners, for people who own heritage residences. And this program would take into account things like heritage landscaping, what to do with an older house, paint schemes, color schemes, and so on. We feel that there's an awful lot of resources out there that we haven't tapped into, and we have a lot of requests and questions from people who own heritage houses, and we feel that seeing as we've come so far with the downtown core being revitalized, we'd like to see some new energy into the residences, which we have a lot of really fine heritage residences.
Oh, trees are a part of what you guys look at as well, isn't it? Also,
That's
in
right.
terms of, are there certain trees designated within the city that have that heritage value? And
well, we'd like to have a sort of a walking tour of trees and things
Good
like.
idea.
There's a lot of value in our history, and trees are part of it. So.
Right, we have another caller. Good evening, Nelson Nightline.
Hi. I'd like to direct my question to Penny Caron and Marty Horswill.
Go ahead.
And it has to do with heritage building and my concern about private construction that's been happening a lot lately, private homes being built that don't conform at all to the heritage guidelines. I see a lot of new homes being built that are very modern in appearance, and I'm wondering whether City Council has considered adopting some kind of bylaw that would essentially help Nelson keep its heritage flavor in the buildings of new private homes. There are other communities that have done that, such as in Santa Fe, New Mexico, for instance. Certain areas have to be built up in the old adobe tradition. And I was just wondering whether it's been considered here at all.
Thank you, caller.
Well,
you're more familiar with the heritage than I am.
It's certainly, that's a very interesting idea, and it's certainly something that we, as the Heritage Advisory Committee, could suggest to council.
But a delicate
But it is
issue,
delicate.
yes.
It really is.
People are building their own homes.
That's right.
freedom of
There's a
choice,
fine line that you end up crossing.
But doesn't the community pride, the heritage pride, hopefully just begin to instill that within each one of us? So we just want to build our homes that conform to kind of that heritage look, and that complements the overall look of the city. I mean, again,
I
it's
think
just
the
a
first step in
personal
that direction is definitely to take the positive approach of encouraging owners of heritage residences, and making whatever assistance we can, be it technical or financial, for them to, to
A little
respect the value
incentive
that
to
they
do
have.
that,
And that is already having an effect, because there's a house about to be built way up in the top in the area that's developed now, where the owner is definitely trying to recreate the Edwardian style of home that was being built in the turn of the century.
Marvelous.
I know, Penny, you sat on the Commission's Tourism Strategy Focus Group, and heritage was certainly a top priority within that group, and especially one of the ideas that came forward was to not only educate our tourists on the heritage of the buildings within the city, but also to educate the residents. And in talking, I think it was with Jack Rodas the other night, he said there's a committee or something in place already that's exploring putting plaques on the outside of the buildings?
Yes, yeah. Well, that's actually, we've been doing that. We do have heritage building plaques that have been going up, and they're available to people who have designated heritage buildings. But we have just ordered a whole new lot of them to be minted.
You've also developed a heritage walking and driving brochure,
That's
have
right.
you not? Again, not just for tourists, and I don't know if a lot of residents are aware of the brochures that your committee has developed.
That's right. They're actually very popular. We're into our, I think, our fourth or fifth printing of both the heritage driving tour and the walking tour, and we also have a new one, the cemetery tour, that's coming. That's going to printers pretty soon, and it'll be available for the summer.
Well, I certainly see a lot of tourists with their noses in the brochures, walking around and looking up and down the Roxanne.
That's right.
Walking tour also that the Chamber of Commerce has developed is extremely popular.
That's right. And the information that are in those brochures is I think it would be a good thing for every Nelsonite to read. It would certainly boost our knowledge of the community we live in, and give us all a sense of community pride.
Has that gone out into the school systems at all? Like, do the teachers and school children avail themselves of that to learn a little bit about
Well,
their history?
actually, during Heritage Week, which is coming up, we have those available to the schools and so on. It is
wonderful. I'd like to hear from our viewers more on a creative solution to this parking thing to kind of swing us back into parking again.
And about other visions of what people want to see Nelson develop into over the next 5 to 10 years. What about you two? Aside from wearing your hats, what visions do you have of Nelson 5, 10 years from now? What would you like to see, Penny, for instance? Obviously heritage themed with a tramway going down Main Street, but what things do you see, or what would you like to develop?
Well, I think I would certainly like to see some development of the river, of the lakefront, waterfront, and a lot more. I know one of the things that really came up for us when we were working with BC Games was the hotel. We need some hotel space and
convention.
Yeah, convention.
Center.
That's right.
That along the waterfront.
Yes.
You'd like to see that along the waterfront.
That would be that would be really nice. I'd like to see that.
But you, Marty?
Well, it's been quite timely that BCBC has been in town around this new building, because it gave us an opportunity to repeat to BCBC Council's interest in the very large piece of property that they own on the waterfront immediately adjacent to the mall, which is presently used as the highways maintenance and storage yard. And that's probably the most important piece of property in the city of Nelson, and because it's grossly underutilized in its present situation and is capable and very strategically placed for some kind of major development, and it is in the area that would join the mall to the rest of the commercial area and join the commercial area to the waterfront. So it's a very strategic piece of property, and so we've been able to use this opportunity to make the case to BCBC, and we spoke to the Minister of the Environment about it, because he's also responsible for lands, and although his ministry isn't specifically responsible for that piece of property because it's not Crown land, it's private land that the government bought up. But he's responsible for the foreshore, and the foreshore would be part of any major development in that area. So he suggested we write to the minister who is responsible for BCBC. That's Minister of Government Services. And I hope that the council will stay the course on this one, because I think as the Vancouver City Council did in the case of Falls Creek and again in the case of the former Expo lands, the city has a major influence on the kinds of development that happen in these strategic areas, and I think that we can do the same for our community, but we have to have a vision and pursue it.
Now, it's timely that the city's undertaking an official community plan right now, are they not? And that there will be a series of public meetings, and the public will have the opportunity to input into the kind of development that would happen on that piece of property, but the waterfront in general, the downtown core, and any number of the neighborhoods.
Yes, it is, and that plan is, I think it's 11 years old now, and there have been a great many changes, particularly in the last 4 or 5 years, and so I think it's really necessary that it be updated, and equally necessary that it be done in a way that allows the population to have a major say in what they'd like to see happen. My expectation is that the Advisory Planning Commission will be working together with the consultant the city's hired to do the review, to set up town hall meetings, neighborhood meetings, topic meetings. There probably be some just on the waterfront, for example, to allow for some kind of dialogue to get started in the community about where they would like the city to go.
He was, you're talking about Michael Rosen, I think. He was in this week. He was supposed to be in town
yes,
Tuesday.
I believe so. He was, yes.
Yeah. So it started, the process has started. What about personally, though? What do you vision on the waterfront, aside from what we have already, a beautiful park and maybe not so beautiful shopping mall? What's missing? What's missing?
Well,
what would you personally like to see?
I would definitely like to see a corridor, a pathway, a bicycle or walking pathway along the entire waterfront from one end to the other, so that people can really get to the water and enjoy it. And then I think the actual commercial or service developments that happen along it can. The people can, as happens, with the new federal building on the waterfront in Vancouver, you can walk right around that building, and it's used as a convention center and hotel and various other commercial purposes. But the public can still continue to walk around it and enjoy the outside access to the water, and I think the same thing
both
happen here.
A private development with some public access to the area, whether it's a hotel or a condominium project or something.
Yeah, and it's purely a question of really intelligent design that makes it work for the public and for the private uses that are going to take place.
Now, that was part of the 1984 waterfront plan, the boardwalk concept, was it not? And that will be under review with this official community plan. So again, the public will have a chance to input into that.
Well, we want to hear from the public on it. We'd like to get a couple more phone calls. Our number is 354-4200. What's your thoughts about parking, about development in downtown Nelson, about the waterfront? I'd like to hear from you and hear what you have to say about that. The city dump.
Transfer station, Morrie.
Transfer station, it's called. I've been corrected last week, 2 weeks ago as well. Does that fit into your mandate at all?
No, that doesn't fit into my mandate.
Yeah, so you're safe on that one.
That's public works.
The mall. The mall. What we're really looking for is what people want to see Nelson develop. A lot of people have told us that they like the heritage, they like the homey feeling of Nelson and area, but to make it grow and prosper, we need certain things. The question is, what is it? Is it condominiums? Is it hotels? That's the question. You'll have to find out from the public, obviously.
Well, Morrie, if I'd like to address that for a second. I think one of the things we haven't talked about tonight is the region around Nelson, and that in itself draws a lot of people to Nelson, and they go, oh wow, they really like the city once they're here. But we have a lot of beautiful, accessible hiking trails and waterways to play on, to recreate on, and it would be nice to see us become a destination for and a center for you know, a lot of adventure tourism, and I think that's something that would work very well for us and fit too. It would fit with the nature of the city so far.
Absolutely, I think that's already started, but because with the emergence of the Silver Still Can tour thing, but also the emergence of bed and breakfast, and the Lake City tour operation that's just started, they cater that kind of adventure tourism. And we don't really notice them as tourists because they're off in the back country. But they come into town to go to the theater, go shopping and eat in our restaurants and whatnot.
And as I say, it acts as a draw and brings so many people here. They come back for other reasons. I think that's a really, you know, one of the benefits that we need to grow on.
You know, I was at a workshop last night and there was 3 or 4 people from Victoria, from the Ministry of Economic Development, and there was three women and 1 man, and all women said the shopping here is fabulous, and it kind of takes you aback because they're coming from these large centers, but the little specialty stores, they were just so impressed with the quality and the selection that we had. They said they head out and power shop for the hour or 2 that they have available, and I don't know if those of us that live here are as aware of the quality that we do have in terms of seeing it through the eyes of outside people.
That's right. I think certainly when it comes to other communities in the interior, we have, you know, we do have a lot more quality stores.
And certainly the arts and culture is a tremendous asset for this community also.
Yes.
And it's a tremendous drawing card.
Yeah.
Capitol Theatre, I mean, I think that goes without saying, has been a wonderful addition to this community.
That's right. Well, I don't know about you people, but a lot of people who come and visit us and stay at our house are always looking for a way to you know, where can we find work in this community? And I don't know whether, I really don't know whether Nelson is prepared for what could happen. I mean, the lifestyle is very attractive to a lot of people, and to date, I don't believe we have the infrastructure to handle, you know, to have all the services available to a lot of the people.
That is, again, a delicate balance. People recognize we need to grow, but with that growth comes change. And are they prepared for the change? And again, if you've got that vision and you're steering it, you can have some control over it.
Well, that's where the community plan and can be very important coming when it is just as we're beginning this period, which, you know, unless there's such a severe recession that the present economic improvement just turns around. But I rather expect that Nelson is quite well placed to continue on, and we're going to need to have a vision and you know, have a direction that we're going to pursue that puts us in the driver's seat rather than having whatever's coming at us from the outside determining what we become.
We certainly got a strong sense of the vision through the economic strategy for the 90s thing, but now comes all the planning and the implementing that ties in with that community plan. Good evening, Nelson Nightline, you're on the air.
I get a sense that want to preserve the quality of life in Nelson, the lifestyle in Nelson, that uncontrolled tourism with its low-paying jobs might be exactly the opposite direction that would be advisable. Thank you.
Thank you. So your tourism...
$5 an hour jobs versus $20 an hour industry jobs in town. Can it support the infrastructure? Who will pay for the parking lot and paving of the streets if we just focus on tourism?
Well, I think a lot of the tourism operators themselves are very well aware of this and are quite consciously pursuing the kind of tourism that Penny mentioned, which is the outdoor recreation and the adventure tour approach, rather than what's commonly known as rubber tire tourism.
This is a higher ticket item?
Yeah, it's a much higher ticket item. The people who are seeking that are a lot more, have a lot more sort of care in what they want, but they're also usually at an income level and they want something that's a high quality and they're prepared to pay for it. The trick for us is to to make sure that we can offer the quality and the consistency, and to sort of get out and market it as a community.
Do we have any idea how much the average tourist spends when they come to Nelson through your tourism committee?
You know, I've had a number of figures thrown at me, and I've forgotten, but
I can't remember them either, but they're hard to get for a specific community. You can get them for the Kootenay region, and for the Kootenays overall, the figure is quite low relative to the province as a whole. And that's because the tourists who go to Vancouver tend to stay in downtown hotels where they're paying $100, $125 a night. The tourists that come here are usually traveling in campers or staying in campgrounds, and so the average spent per night is considerably less.
They're not spending in the stores, or
well, yeah. Definitely they are.
Spending.
Yeah, but again, the reason where the adventure tourists come in is because then they're also not only are they staying longer to participate in these tours and therefore using the hotel accommodation more, but they're also, if they're going on a guided tour, they're probably spending amount equal to the hotel accommodation on the tour and employing the tour guide, who's getting a much higher salary than the person who's working in the restaurant or the hotel chambermaid.
We have another caller. Good evening, Nelson Nightline. You're on the air.
Yes, hello. Regarding the parking situation and whatnot, I know in the summertime down at the Lakeside Park there, it's a real nightmare with the cars that we do get there already. So, as far as I'm concerned, I can't see any parking for the city or any type of that thing being of any use. But you look at CPR at the bottom of the street there, and you look at that building sitting there, and I imagine it's pretty well empty. There's very few cars parked outside. I think that'd be a good task to get on CPR's case and get some use out of that building, and also the parking there. It's very, it's right next to the downtown core and whatnot. It's a real shame. I can't see a provincial building going in on the corner there. There's just not the parking for it, like you say, and I don't know. There's been a few things done in the mall. The tracks run right through the mall are sure not a lot of fun to drive through and whatnot either. That's pretty well all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, caller.
Well, just let me straighten the caller out for a second. First of all, the mall tracks, as you probably can confirm, will be redone before the project is completed, and hopefully it'll be a smoother ride. As far as using CP Rail lands, they're a private company. Who's going to put the money up to buy that property from them? It's going for market value, presumably, Marty.
Well, it isn't for sale is the problem.
It isn't for sale. Yeah.
Our understanding is that they plan to construct some kind of a reload facility out on where some of the tracks used to be, and the access to that is right through the area that's presently vacant and would make fine parking. It's already paved, so that's the area we were hoping to lease from CPR, and then develop some proper lines or ways of controlling the parking and maximizing the space. So that really came to naught. The building is another issue, but
that's their white building on the corner there.
No, the old station house itself. We were hopeful that they were making almost no use of it, and we were hoping that they might sell it, and we had a number of groups in the community that were interested in it for service purposes, and we were certainly encouraging that. Unfortunately, CPR's since decided to move some other operations into that building, and they're indicating that they intend to continue to use it for 5 to 10 years. So that's just on the back burner. I agree with the caller that the park and ride option from Lakeside Park isn't much of an option in the summertime. But for 10 months out of the year, that parking area is almost unused.
And certainly could be. Did not the Transportation Committee come up with that option a while ago? In terms of just getting that information out to people and using, I forget which bus service or which bus actually it was, to just get the people into the downtown core at the start of work. And
we did quite a bit of work on the system, and it ultimately ended up with BC Transit because the provincial government subsidizes about close to half of the cost of the transit service, and they have to agree to any system that we would put in place. And so it ended up in discussions about whether the transit portion of the system would be free to the person, whether there'd be a charge for the parking space, and that would go to the transit system, and those kinds of technical financial things have slowed the process up. But we still haven't figured out how to deal with the summer months. And somebody who's paying for a spot and relying on it to get to work, they're going to feel, and they're also going to get there first in the morning, so it's going to create a problem for the people who are using the park for recreation.
Another thing that we have to look forward to in the future is phase 3 of the Heritage revitalization down the Front Street corridor. Is that correct? Is there any timelines on that, or what stages is that at?
It's in the process now. There's a committee of merchants from the area who are working with Bob Inwood, our consultant, and because the Front Street is the provincial highway, it's discussions with the Ministry of Highway that are the holdup at the present time.
And what's the holdup there? Can you elaborate on that?
Well, the Ministry of Highways is looking at the increase in travel. They tell us that there are as many cars drive on the North Shore into Nelson during the summer months as drive the Trans-Canada Highway.
And what are they
and
proposing?
For that reason, they're looking at the traffic load along Nelson Avenue to the foot of Baker and saying they'd like to see that 4 lanes. And we're saying we wouldn't like to see it 4 lanes, and certainly the people involved in phase 3 revitalization are trying to create an area that's friendly to shoppers and people feel comfortable walking on, and 4 lanes of cars zipping by is not friendly. It also doesn't provide for parking. So we're simply headed in 180-degree opposite directions from the Ministry of Highway at present time.
So Front Street could conceivably be a 4-lane highway, is that what you're saying?
If the Ministry of Highway's present plans come to fruition, that's what they will do. So we have to find some options and press for them.
Well, Marianne, the show's almost over for tonight. I just thought I'd remind us that our next show is slated. Oh, we got a call before I do that. Let's get the last call in first, and then I'll do it.
Good evening, Nelson Nightline. You're on the air.
Yeah, I've got just one question here. It seems to be there's a paradox forming with the parking becoming an issue in Nelson, and this local BIA thing that's just been formed. We're spending or taxing, I guess, business owners another $60,000 to generate tourist traffic to come to Nelson, and yet when they come to Nelson, they can't park anywhere. So should that $60,000 that's being generated through tax revenues be used to fund a parkade or some other alternate parking usage? Because it's a paradox. It's ridiculous to be generating $60,000 to try to get people to come to Nelson. When they come here, they have nowhere to park. And I'll leave that with you, with the panel here.
Thank you, caller.
And then you're going to tow them if they plug their meter.
But I believe what
only the repeat offenders.
The caller's referring to the new business improvement area, is he not? Where businesses within the downtown core have another tax or 1% levied on them to go towards a marketing pool or whatnot fund.
Yeah, well, I think the answer is we have to do both. We need to have the BIA, and we need to market the community in a more effective way, and that's what I hope the BIA will do. But yes, indeed, we've got to have spaces to accommodate the tourists when they get here. And Morrie, I should point out that on the contrary, far from towing tourists, we've instituted 2 new systems so that a tourist who has an out-of-province license won't get a ticket. They'll get a welcome to Nelson, and you're welcome to have 24 hours of free parking put on their windshield instead of a ticket. And we're also, together with the Chamber of Commerce, working on a system for shoppers from outside of Nelson but within the province can go to the Chamber of Commerce and get a parking pass for 1 day to do their shopping in Nelson. So no, we do not want to be unfriendly to people who want to come to our city to do their business.
But it seems to me all we need at this point is a coordinated effort. If you said if the provincial government would build a parking or parkade for their workers, it would free up the parkade for the downtown people to park there, leaving the streets free, ideally, for the shoppers and tourists. So it's just a coordinated effort to make all of those things
Which is the
fall into
chicken, which
place.
is the egg?
Got another call.
Another call on the line.
Good evening, Nelson Nightline. You're on the air.
Yes, I have a question to do with trying to get a hotel into the town. Something like on the Northland property that the city had tried to, what should have happened, which never did, if they're trying to get something along that line, which, you know, conventions and that sort of thing would certainly help. I'll hang up and listen to the answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comment?
Well, I agree with the caller that we need a hotel with some convention facilities. It would you know, be a godsend to the city, allow a lot of things to happen which people are interested in doing in our community, but we simply can't accommodate them. I understand that there are a number of parties interested in that particular property that you mentioned, and I rather expect that we will see some kind of development happen there within the next year or two.
Good. Just let me get this in before the show's over. I want to remind our guests that our next show is February 26th, and it should be a very interesting one. With the current focus, the Environment Minister John Cashore is looking into Lasca Creek logging, so we thought we'd ask you about your thoughts about logging Lasca Creek, Hasty Creek, and the Kootenays. You know, there's roadblocks up today and yesterday and tomorrow, I believe, and we're going to focus on logging in Lasca and Hasty in our next phone-in show, so we hope the lines will heat up on that one. The rebroadcast of tonight's show are February 14 at 11:05 a.m. and Sunday, February 16th at 8:05 p.m. I've done our housekeeping anyway now. Great.
Do either one of you have any comments on the situation that surrounds us with both Lasca Creek and Hasty Creek before we end the program?
Heat up the lines for 2 weeks from now.
As Premier Harcourt stated in a press release a couple of weeks ago that they are going to be announcing either a log-around review and decision towards the end of the month. Whether our program airs prior to the decision or after, we don't know at this point in time, but apparently a decision is going to be made on both Lasca and Hasty Creek.
Well, I guess all I can say is that when the mayor and I and the administrator were speaking to the minister for us last week, most of our time with him was spent discussing Lasca Creek. That hadn't been our intention when we set the meeting up, but it was the issue of the moment when we got there. We have asked the minister and got his agreement to our trying, as the City of Nelson, to broker some kind of a solution amongst all the parties within the community, and the minister's indicated that if we can find a solution that the parties in the community are agreeable to, that the minister would go along with whatever that solution was, presuming that all the parties have indeed agreed to it. So it's not made those options any easier, but it's at least the minister said that he will allow the community an opportunity to try to solve the problem itself.
Excellent. Any final comments? I think we have about a minute and a half left of airtime that you'd just like to get in there before we go off the air.
Well, I think I'd like to say that it was very interesting hearing the comments before the show that the reporter at large had gathered, and I think parking is certainly something that a lot of people are concerned about, and the city is aware of it and looking at it.
But it sounds like we could almost be to a solution if a number of different things come into place.
Yes.
And it sounds like the main thing would be that parkade behind the white building might be the answer.
Thank you very much, Penny. Thank you very much,
Thank
Marty.
you both.
Well, thank you for having us. It's been a pleasure.
Well,
Yeah, it's been great. Thanks.
And good night, everybody. This is Nelson Nightline signing off, and we'll be on again February 26th.
Yes.
Should be an interesting show.